in this chapter 6, what we have covered so far is two examples, that what is a normal class, and given you have a normal class, how we can actually create the objects of the normal class, how to take input and how to print them. In another program, we have seen that if the variables are private, in that case how we can take input, okay, and how we can print them. We have seen the difference between public and private, and in the public variables or public functions we can access them directly, and in private we have to access them through a function. And the next example that we have seen, that in case of object oriented programming, okay, we can actually implement this concept in any type of real life scenarios. Previously, whenever we learned C programming, in short procedural programming, the problem was if we wanted to apply in the real life scenarios, what happened that sometimes the approach was not there or it was not quite correct. If we could implement using a structure, okay, but still some of the features that we will see from today were not applicable in the C++, in C programming or the procedural programming. So first of them is constructor. Before going to the constructor, let me give you a scenario. Let's assume that in IOBAT student management, okay, we have this in IOBAT student management software, we have this scenario that where you want to design an program or project that will actually store all the information of the students. Now, if you want to store all the information of the student, what you can do, okay, you can actually create a class, and in that class you can use integer ID, and then you can store apart from ID you can also store the student's name, the way we did so far, right? Now the problem with that whenever we use that approach, that sometimes, okay, that some variables need to be initiated automatically. So when I say initiated automatically, what does this mean? Just think about your ID number. Okay, so whenever you have an ID, okay, what do? We use that ID to identify student. Now in this class, think about this class. Do any of you have the same ID? Definitely no, right? All of you have a different ID. How is that possible? Because whenever assigning an ID, it was somehow kept track that each person gets a different ID. Okay, now if we go for our demo for this, uh, let's open a program and I will show you a demo. So there's two ways we can do this. Okay, one thing is that we can what we can do, we can create a counter for it that will keep track of all the variables, okay, that we do in C. So another case, let me discuss that in C programming. Let's think about that you want to keep track how many numbers you have added. So what we do, we use a counter, okay, that counts that how many prime number is there. Did you guys practice that problem to count how many prime numbers is from 1 to 10 or how many from 1 to 100? There was a problem in C. Did you guys practice that problem?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
We have practice in C programs.
Okay, that's nice. Okay, but you have the idea. So if any of you didn't practice that problem, so let me give an idea. So first, what you have to do, learn the program how to find a prime number. Okay, then what you can do, okay, just count that for a given range like 10 to 500, how many prime numbers are there. A simple version would be like you will write a program to find how many numbers are divisible by 5 from 1 to 100. So basic idea is you will learn how to count. So we can follow the same approach, right? We can use a counter that will count the student ID. Okay, so every time one student gets admitted, the student ID will increase by 1. So if I write this down, let's assume initially the counter is 190000 for, okay, let's 1910000, okay, for the first student. So whenever first student get admitted, so let's assume this is the counter for the first ID. So let's name it ID equals to 00 first ID. Now every time a student gets admitted, ID gets plus plus, that is the value gets incremented by 1. So when the next student gets admitted, the ID becomes 19002, then 3, then 4, and so on. Okay, so this is one simple approach, right? So to do that, okay, to initialize variables, we can use constructor. Now let's discuss a little bit. So here, so first of all, what is a constructor? Constructors are basically a member function. Okay, so let's discuss in terms of this program. So as you can see that in this program, okay, this actually shows two ways the member functions can be used to give values to the data items or an object. So there are two ways we use the member function. Sometimes it's convenient if an object can initialize itself. Oh, let me close this one. Yes. So sometimes convenient if an object can initialize itself. That means whenever you create an object, the values of the object will be created automatically. That means every time, okay, let's assume that two students got admitted. Okay, now initially whenever two students got admitted, we only have their IDs, but their parents address, all other informations are not given. Just think about that. Suppose someone got admitted and you need to provide 5 information. Okay, the informations are like you need to provide your name, ID. You need to provide your SSC, HSC result, your phone number. Okay, now among this, these three are essential: name, ID, and phone number. Rest two can be given to you later. So now if we go back to our code blocks, let me share a code with you that we did in the last class. So this is one of the code that we see in the last class. Okay, I have named it wrong. Just a minute. Mm, mm, Open demo. Okay, let's assume this program. Okay, so when we actually, you see when we wait, let me check, did I share the code blocks? Oh yeah. So when we create the object, so this is our object that is part X. So we created the object, and after creating the object, what we did, we initialized 3 variables. Okay, so all this 3 goes into this function set part. They assign the values. Now what if, okay, sometimes there's one student comes and says, sir, I currently can give only this 2 information, I will provide this information later. This might happen, right? Or sometimes it might happen they will provide the as we have seen, the class and sorry, you will provide your phone number, ID, but you will provide your SSHSC result later. So sometimes some of the objects can be initialized itself when it's created. So let's see an example. I have instead of explaining, okay, the examples will be much more easier. So let me copy this code. Mm, so this is our how which how many chapter 6, this will be fourth code, 6.4, oh no, 64.cpp. Okay, so just change the columns. Mm, let's try to run this one. Oh, I forgot to copy part of it. So let me check just whether it runs or not. Yes, it runs. So now let me explain the code. Sorry. So now let's see what happens in the code, then I will explain what is constructor and how it works. So initially, again, we declared these two directive, the header file and the namespace. Hello.
We
Sir, we
cannot
cannot
see your
see the
compiler with
compiler.
you.
I have shared it now. Can you see it now?
Yes, sir. Now it's
Yes,
okay.
sir.
Okay, now let me explain the code. So initially what we do, we declare this two header directives, header files and the namespace. Then we create a class called counter. So in the counter, we have one variable that is called integer count. Okay, that's a private. And then we have this public variable, public functions. One function is called counter. So first thing about the constructor, that constructor is a function okay, which have the same name as the class. So you see what was the class name? Counter. So whenever you see a function with the same name as the class, you will understand that this is a constructor. And you see in the constructor there's nothing, empty body. Okay, let me just comment about this one. Okay, no, okay, let's skip it. So this is the constructor. Then we have again two functions. One is increment counter and another is get counter. Okay, so this increment counter, what it does, it basically increases the value of counter by 1. Now when we create an object, okay, in that we did in the previous classes. Okay, let's open a program that from the previous classes. Mm, so now this was the, wait, was it, no, not this, not this. Yeah, I was talking about this one. So let me just modify this one. So what if, okay, we don't call this function. Okay, let's not call this function and let's see what happens. So I will now, you see this is the program that we did in the last class. Okay, what I did, okay, initially what was the output? Let me just run the program. You see the values that I put here are get as an output. Very simple, right? Now let's change it a little bit. Let's not call the function and let's see what happens. You see, now if I actually don't call this function, they actually print garbage value. So how do we understand these are garbage values? Because these are memory addresses. Okay, so this is the first. Now what we do here, okay, let's just change this a little bit. Let's do the same for this function. So we have created two objects, again same. Okay, and then instead of creating the object, we directly call the get count function. Even though we didn't use any set, just like in this one set part, we call this function. Okay, and then let me just comment this part. Okay, let me just run the program. You see, instead of printing the garbage values, it's printing C1 equals to 0, C2 equals to 0. Now let me change it a little bit. Let's make it 1 and let's see what happens. Again, let me run the program. You see, C1 equals to 1, C2 equals to 1. Let me now put your IDs. Okay, let's 1900001. Okay, now let me run the program. You see the output. Should I need to zoom it a little bit? You see the output, the one that I have put in the constructor. So what does this actually mean? Okay, let's now go back to the code. So basically what's happening, that the constructor initializes a value to the object's variable. So here, what is our variable? Integer count, right? And if I pass 19001, what it does, it actually assigns this value whenever the object is created. That means whenever you write this line, counter C1, C2, okay, it goes to create a class, and when it's creating the class, it checks the constructor. It asks, hey, do I have to do anything? The when I'm initializing the object, it's a yes, you have to assign this value. So this is what the constructor does. Now why constructor does it and what are the advantages, we'll discuss them one by one. But let me first make sure that you understand how constructor work. So this is just one example. Let me put it another way. Let's make it a counter. Okay, let's assign here ID, and let's, for now, let's declare a global variable. Oh, what's happening? So ID equals to 0 initially, no, 1900, and then here this will be ID plus plus. Now let's run the same program again. You see, it's not, oh sorry, you see what's happening? All I did was made a simple change, but now the code is not working anymore. So we are unable to initialize with a global object. So let's try to give input, it's crashing. So this is one problem with the constructor. I will come to that later. For now, let's go back to our 1900. So again, let's go back to the book. So this is an example of what constructor does. Now let's uncomment this part. So let's see what happens when I run the full code. So if you see in the screen, initially, okay, the values were 1900. When I actually run the when the objects are created at first, I take a get count. So the get counts give us 1900, 1900. Then what I did, I call the function increment count. So what it does, it actually access the get increment count, access the count variable that we have here and increase the counter by 1. So after increasing the counter by 1, okay, it returns here. So now if I call the get count, c1's value increased by 1. Then for c2 I have called the function twice, so c2's value is increased by 2. So if I call the function 3 times, what will happen? Let's call the function c2 3 times. So as you can understand, c2 will be now it was 1902. Now if I again run the function, okay, wait, I'm running the function. Yeah, it's done. So you see now the value is 1903. So every time you want to increment, you just have to call the function. We know that. But the main part is this one. Now we are not getting any garbage values. Okay, some values are getting initialized whenever we write the program. Now, is it only for integer? No. Like if you get admitted to the CC department, okay, by default, what I can do, I can assign here, like let's assume, let's declare a string name department. Okay, and if whenever someone gets admitted, okay, for the department, what we can do, okay, just like this one, okay, we can also write it here as well sometimes. So for the department, we can also use like your CSE, sorry, or CSE, okay, and then what it will do, if I change the constructive values, it will assign CSE as a department. Now, so this is the basic idea of the constructor, that we can initialize values. Now let's come back here. So this is basically an way of automatic initialization. When an object, oh, let me highlight this one, object of type counter is first created, we want to count it to initialize to 0. Okay, so when it's initialized to 0, every time you create an object, there will be no garbage values. Now, second thing is it has to have same name as the class. Then there can be a list of things that you can initialize. Okay, you can write like this that we used in the current program, count 0. Okay, what it does, it says that this is a constructor function. Then count 0 means that the value of count should be set to 0. What if you have multiple variables? Okay, m1, m2, m3, so you can use like this. Okay, so m1, m2, m3, m4, and so on. So this is called, there's another name for it, that is called member initialization list. So this is basically a list of values that were initialized. Now the question comes, sir, why we are actually doing this? Why not initialize in the constructor, body of the constructor? Okay, why not just, let's go back to the program. So instead of writing here, why not just write here, sir? Why we are taking the trouble of writing here with the commas? Okay, wouldn't be simple if I just write here? So this is a very simple question, right? So let's go back to the book. So what is the reason that we don't write it here? First of all, there are cases you can do that. Okay, let me be very clear. Okay, but for some complex reasons that we will learn in the upcoming slides, okay, we don't actually do that. And one of them is that the fact the members initialized in the initials are given a value before the constructor even starts to execute. So constructor itself is a function. And we know that every function actually gets started with the main function. Okay, so sometimes what happens when a class is created, even before the function starts executing, we have to assign values. And being a function, okay, we actually, it sometimes, okay, in some situation, it actually creates complexity and problems. So we will discuss them very soon, don't worry. But for now, okay, what we will do, we will actually follow this normal approach. In that case, you will have no confusion. Okay, now, so this is the output. I think you have understand. There's another example of graphics. If you have the graphics library, this program will run, else this will not. So let's go for the another concept. This is basically the opposite of constructor. This is called destructor. Now what is a destructor? This is also a special member function. This is also a special yes, so this is also a special member function, like just like the constructor, it is called automatically. So constructor and destructor, you don't have to call them. Okay, just like other functions, you don't have to call them, they are created automatically. Now As I was saying, that when the program first created, okay, we call the constructor, and when the object is destroyed, that means when you exit from the program, destructor automatically clears the memory and object is destroyed. So destructor destroys the object, constructor, okay, assign values to the object. The destructor will also have the same name as the constructor. Okay, then how we will understand the difference if both of them have the same name? The answer is, okay, there is a small difference, that is this sign. Let me copy the code, it will be easy to understand. Okay, I'm restarting the meeting. Okay, my meeting time is almost over, so join again.